Hello friends, I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So in this particular edition, we are going to take a look at very important articles that are part of Hindu, Indian Express as well as PIB. So the first article that we are going to discuss is about India-UK trade deal being finally signed. Important update regarding India-UK, particularly bilateral relationships, important from the perspective of IRGS2. Another important article that we are going to discuss is about no plan or intention to make changes to preamble as of now. The law minister particularly explained this recently. So important update from the perspective of again GS2. Another important article is about coral cover in Lakshadweep decreasing by almost 50% in last 24 years. Important update from the perspective of GS3 environment, and from the perspective of prelims particularly, knowing everything about corals is very vital. So stay tuned. Another vital article that we are going to take a look at is about the Union Minister highlighting India's global leadership in wetland conservation at a COP summit in Zimbabwe. Important update from the perspective of again GS3 environment, knowing everything about wetlands is again vital, and also Ramsar Convention in that regard, Montreux's record are important to know from the perspective of prelims. So stay tuned. Another important article, particularly in the decoded section, that we are going to take a look at is new reset in the cooperative vision for India. In the wake of new cooperative policy, this particular article is again very vital. Cooperative sector important from the perspective of GS2 as well as GS3 economy. So stay tuned. So the first article that we are going to discuss is about India-UK trade deal being finally signed. So deal is finally done with the recent visit of Prime Minister to the London. The signing ceremony has recently happened. So essentially, India and UK have signed the long-awaited comprehensive economic and trade agreement, making a significant step towards deeper economic cooperation. The agreement aims to foster shared prosperity with a joint goal of doubling bilateral trade in goods and services by 2030. So the goal is to double bilateral trade by 2030 from the current $56 billion. So it is our goal to actually increase the bilateral trade between the two countries to almost $120 billion by 2030. So particularly important to know is about the evolution of this particular trade. So the news regarding this particular bilateral agreement is in news from the last several years or rather decades. So in this regard, the final signing of the agreement is a milestone in the bilateral relationship, and it can be a stepping stone for larger trade deals with US and EU as well. So important from the perspective of economy, not just for India but from the perspective of UK as well. So the evolution here is vital. So initial talks were started way back in 2007. The discussions began with the UK when the UK was part of EU. Talks collapsed due to EU's steep demands for access to sensitive Indian sectors like automobiles and agriculture, which lacked domestic consensus at that point of time. Shift in focus post RCP 2019. So the post RCP debacle, the India felt need to have the bilateral agreements with major Western powers. India exited RCP negotiations over concerns about Chinese imports, prompting a strategic pivot towards Western markets for trade integration, including the UK. So post RCP, we have this ambition of signing the bilateral trade agreements with Western markets particularly, so that we do not lose out on the Chinese juggernaut. Brexit and UK political instability. Despite renewed efforts, Brexit in 2016 and subsequent political instability in the UK under the three prime ministers from 2022 to 2025 delayed progress. Notably, the Diwali deadline set by Prime Minister Boris Johnson was missed as well at that point of time. Breakthrough was there now in 2025. The deal finally gained momentum and was signed after the Labour Party, led by Keir Starmer, won a landslide victory in May 2025, providing the political stability needed to conclude the negotiations. So this is about something, the history of the trade agreement itself. So what are some key provisions of the CETA, particularly this particular trade agreement? There is, we are going to take a look at some of the specific provisions of this particular trade agreement. First one is out alcoholic beverages. India will gradually reduce import duties on UK origin spirits such as whiskey, brandy, rum, vodka, etc. Products must meet a minimum import price of $5 per liter or $6 per 750 ml to qualify. For eligible products, duties will reduce from 110% in a year to 75% by year 10 via equal cuts. So essentially, additionally, Scotch and whiskey's duties will also are going to drop by 75%. So essentially, alcoholic beverages originating from UK will become cheaper in India. So good news for drunkards particularly. So when it comes to automobiles, India will cut import duties on British luxury cars from 100% to 10% over 15-year period. The reduced rate will apply to quota of 10,000 units, initially increasing to 19,000 by the 5th year. So we will see many more British luxury cars on Indian roads in upcoming times. When it comes to agriculture, which is sensitive subject for the Indian perspective, India excluded sensitive agri products from tariffs, concessions, including dairy, apples, walnuts, whey, cheese, and certain seeds. So essentially, India excluded these sectors from the remit of this agreement. UK also excluded meat and egg based products as at the same time. So there was some give and take when it comes to agriculture. Another important part is about public procurement. India has opened select public procurement tenders to British companies, especially in the automobile and alcoholic beverages sectors, mobility workers and services. So this is very vital point. India has placed no cap on UK service providers but retained regulatory carve-outs in legal services, taxation, national security. UK's commitments are cautious, offering limited professional mobility but granting commercial presence in areas like IT consultancy and environmental services. So UK, being cautious, tried to open up some of its sectors for Indian workers and services as well. A non-binding annual quota of 1,800 for the temporary entry of chefs, classical musicians and yoga instructors was agreed upon. So this is also good step. No concrete commitments yet on broader visa categories like business visitors and IT professionals. So this could have been a big news, but again, the agreements in this regard is expected in the upcoming time. So we are going to see what happens in this regard about the visa categories like business visitors or say IT professionals. So we are positive about it. When it comes to social security, under the double contributions convention, India and UK workers temporarily working in the other country up to 3 years will only contribute to their home country's social security system. So what are the benefits for India, by the way? Export gains of 99% of Indian exports to the UK to enjoy tariff-free access covering nearly 100% of trade value. Boost to labor-intensive sectors like textile, leather, gems and jewelry, marine exports. So note down these particular points you can effectively utilize in the mains particularly. Enhance market access, UK to eliminate tariffs up to 20% on key Indian exports like textiles, footwear, seafood, dairy, meat products. 99.7% of food sector tariffs lines from India to receive zero duty access in the UK. So this is also very vital. So in the labor intensive sectors like textiles, footwear, seafood, etc., UK has opened up for Indian exports. Expansion potential, India, currently the 4th largest textile exporter to the UK, may expand market share beyond the current 6%, challenging even China, which is at 25% currently, Bangladesh at 20% and Turkey at 8%. So currently India is the 4th largest textile supplier to the UK, but due to this particular agreement, it has the potential to increase the textile exports to UK as well. Domestic industry protection, alcohol imports, high-end UK vehicles allowed with phase duty cuts. So there are some, protections being placed so that the domestic industry production in India doesn't suffer in that regard. Worker mobility and services, India retains regulatory carve-outs in legal services, taxation and national security. UK allows limited temporary entry. We have earlier seen what exactly is this temporary entry. What are the consumer benefits to India, by the way? Cheaper imports of UK made products like medical devices, soft drinks, cosmetics and aerospace parts. Average tariffs on these items are to fail from 15% to 3%. So some of the consumer goods to India will become cheaper as well from the UK. Services sector boost is very, very vital. As I said, double contribution convention to prevent dual security social security payments for temporary workers has been announced. Strategic and geopolitical significance is also vital. Serve as a template for India's future FTAs with EU and US. This particular point is vital, very, very vital. So this can be template for India, EU or India US trade deals as well. Enhances India's integration into global supply chains. Investment and employment expected to generate new job opportunities. Regulatory balance. India retained policy space in sensitive areas such as legal services, taxation, etc. Balanced concession framework. So essentially, what are the benefits for the UK at the same time? So there are benefits for the India, we have seen it, but what about UK? Worker mobility and services. Due to double contributions convention, UK economy would benefit from India's skilled talent and new employment opportunities. Access to Indian market is another important aspect from the perspective of, say, UK. Tariff reductions benefiting UK manufacturers. For example, aerospace tariffs cut from 11% to 0%, automotives from 110% down to 10% with limited quota. As I earlier said, electricity machinery reduced from 22 to 0%. So there are there is substantial benefit for UK economy as well. Overall significance is also very vital to know. Strategic timing in the global trade landscape with the Trump's tariff threat. So essentially the signing of this particular agreement is important. Template for future FTAs with EU and US. Balanced concessional framework essentially balances the concerns of both the countries. So there is, as I earlier said, give and take between the two countries. It is showing the strong bilateral relations as well. Caution on domestic policy levers. The FTA sets precedents in areas like public procurement, potentially affecting India's long-term ability to use trade tools for domestic policy goals such as import substitution, make in India. Economic gains is tremendous. India-UK bilateral trade by 39% will increase by 39% in the long term, equivalent to an increase of almost $34.5 billion annually by 2040. So this is huge increase. Global supply chain integration. When it comes to this particular fact, India's integration into global supply chains is important, which will improve ease of doing business and modernize trade infrastructure at the same time. Let's see in recent years, what is the status of India-UK trade. Merchandise trade, when it comes to, this is the data for 24-25 by the way, exports from India to UK rose by 12.6% to $14.5 billion, while imports from UK increased by only 2.3% to $8.6 billion. Services trade as of 24, India's service exports to UK grew by 16% to 14.7 billion pounds. Services imports from UK remained flat at about 10 billion pounds. Overall bilateral trade increased from $20.36 billion in 22-23 to $21.34 billion as of 23-24, reflecting a steady upward trend in UK-India bilateral economic engagement. So this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Important trade deal being signed. Also important to know with how many countries, with how many other countries India has signed such type of trade agreements. Just comment your answer in the comment section to that particular question as well. So the next important article is about the law minister telling Rajya Sabha that no plan or intention is there to make changes to the preamble now. So what has happened is, earlier we have seen the Supreme Court judgment in November 2024, which dismissed the petitions challenging the 1976 amendment, 42nd constitutional amendment to the preamble. So in this regard, what is the position of the government is very, very vital. So there is always the demand to make the changes to the preamble, particularly as preamble has been constitutionally amended only once until this time, essentially through 42nd constitutional amendment, which added certain words. The union government has no current plan or intention to remove or reconsider the words socialism and secularism from the preamble of the constitution. So these two particular words were added by the 42nd constitutional amendment in 1976, which is often referred as a mini constitution in itself, due to its vast nature of changes it brought to the constitution. This was clarified by Union Law Minister. No formal legal or constitutional process has been initiated as well. While some discussions may exist in public or political spaces, these do not reflect the government's official position. What is the Supreme Court's 2024 verdict in this regard? In November 2024, Supreme Court dismissed petitions challenging the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, which inserted the words socialist, secular into the preamble. The court upheld Parliament's power to amend the preamble. Socialism means welfare state in the Indian context and is not anti-private sector. Secularism is an integral part of the constitution's basic structure. So, the Supreme Court in its earlier judgments as well called secularism as a part of basic structure, and it reaffirmed the same position in this particular verdict as well. By the way, we are going to take a look at some of the basics of the preamble now. So, what exactly is the preamble? A brief introductory statement that sets out the guiding purpose, principles and philosophy of the constitution. So, essentially preamble gives the philosophy of the constitution. It is the mirror to the constitution. Remember that. It is essentially outlines the vision of the founding fathers for India and the kind of nation they sought to create. So, based on Jawaharlal Nehru's objectives resolution adopted on 22nd January 1947. Remember these particular facts here. Preamble is based on Nehru's objectives resolution adopted on 22nd January 1947. Liberty, equality, fraternity in the preamble derived from the French Revolution. So, this is the inspiration for the preamble particularly. So, this is the preamble. So, I am going to recite the preamble now. You must know each and every word carefully. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote equality among them all, fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individuals and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this constitution. So, you must know each and every word in the preamble. You can get the question particularly in the mains in this regard. So, the meaning of each and every term is very, very vital. The purpose of the preamble, it indicates the source of the constitution, the people, declares the nature of the Indian state, states the objectives like justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, mentions the adoption date as well. So, these are some specific details from the preamble that I just recited. What are the components? By the way, you can look at the components as well. So, already the most important point here to know is secular equal treatment of all religions, Sarva Dharma Samabhav, added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment 1976. Socialist was also added by this particular amendment as well. You can take a look at the objectives as well. Justice, liberty, equality and fraternity are the objectives of the preamble. What about the legal status? When it comes to the legal status, Berubari Union case is very, very vital of 1960. In it, the preamble is a guiding light but not a part of constitution. So, what the Supreme Court said in Berubari Union case when it comes to preamble, it is a guiding light but it is not part of the constitution. But in Keshwanand Bharti case in 1973, it overruled Berubari Union case, declared preamble is a part of the constitution and thus amendable. In LIC case of 1995, Supreme Court reaffirmed the preamble as the part of the constitution but not enforceable in court. So, what Supreme Court did in LIC case of 1995, it said that it is the courts cannot enforce the preamble particularly. What about the amendments to the preamble? By the way, the preamble has been amended only once through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. It added 3 words: socialist, secular, integrity. Remember these 3 words. Already UPSC has asked PYQ on this particular fact. Changed unity of the nation to unity and integrity of the nation. Preamble can be amended under Article 368, but not its basic structure. So, preamble can be amended under Article 368, but you cannot alter the basic structure. So, that is the basic structure doctrine given by the Supreme Court in the Keshavanand Bharti judgment itself. So, this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So, another important article that we are going to discuss is about 24-year survey revealing the coral cover in Lakshadweep seeing almost 50% reduction. So, this particular fact is important. You can utilize such data facts effectively in your GS3 answers. The importance of corals in this regard is also important from the perspective of, say, GS3 mains. But at the same time, from the perspective of prelims, particularly the specifics of corals is very, very vital. The study is one of the longest running coral reef monitoring programs in Indian Ocean, spanning almost 24 years since 1998. So, this particular study conducted by Nature Conservation Foundation, it focused on 3 atolls in Lakshadweep called Agatti, Kadmat and Kavaratti. So, these are the 3 atolls that were particularly focused on in this particular study. The research is published in the journal Diversity and Distributions under this particular title, not that much important. By the way, marine heat waves are adversely affecting the corals. So, that particular fact is also very vital. So, knowing the basics of marine heat waves and how they are different from, say, heat waves, what is there any specific definition of marine heat wave, that is also very, very vital to know. But we are going to actually center our discussion more around the corals in this particular article. So, impact of climate events on coral health. So, the study tracked coral reef changes during 3 El Nino Southern Oscillations events of 1998, 2010 and 2016. So, ENSO events of 1998, 2010 and 2016. These events triggered mass coral bleaching, significantly damaging reef ecosystem. So, coral bleaching happened due to El Nino events. Repeated marine heat waves intensified by climate change were the primary drivers of this coral degradation. Local factors like wave exposure, reef depth, apart from that, influence how coral reefs responded to thermal stress as well. These site-specific environmental filters determined coral vulnerability, survival and recovery capacity. So, these are some of the important reasons for such degradation of the coral reefs in Lakshadweep. But what about the recovery patterns and resilience in this regard? After each bleaching episode, coral recovery rates declined. So, over the period of time, the coral recovery rate is getting declined. It essentially also shows the corals are resilient to, say, the milder changes in the climate, but with subsequent huge changes brought in by the climate change, essentially the resilient coral and the rate of recovery of corals is also getting declined over the period of time. Towards a protective conservation framework in this regard, we have to go to the protective conservation framework, identifying vulnerable reef systems, highlighting the areas with strong recovery potential. So, we have to identify the areas with strong recovery potential and focus on that. So, targeted conservation is what needed to protect or conserve the coral reefs or atolls of Lakshadweep. So, that is the overall sort of result of the overall study. But let us see some of the basics of the coral reefs now. Coral reefs are vibrant underwater ecosystem formed by colonies of coral polyps that secrete calcium carbonate, creating large reef structure. These corals have a symbiotic relationship with algae, zooxanthellae, which helps them with photosynthesis and energy. So, there is a symbiotic relationship with algae of the coral polyps. Though covering less than 0.1% of the ocean floor, they support nearly 25% of all marine species, making them critical to global marine biodiversity. So, this particular fact is very, very vital. As I earlier said, you may get question on coral bleaching, coral reefs. So, such facts are very, very vital to actually support your arguments. Why they are important? Reefs are often called rainforests of the sea. So, this fact is also very vital from the perspective of prelims. What are called the rainforests of the sea? Reefs are called rainforests of the sea. What are the ideal conditions for the coral reef formations, by the way? So these are also important facts from the perspective of prelims. Temperature, warm waters ranging from 23 to 29 degrees Celsius. So 23 to 29 degrees Celsius is an appropriate temperature range for the growth of corals. Depth, shallow waters, usually less than 50 meters to allow sunlight. So sunlight is also needed, but remember, there are deep water corals as well. There are some type of corals which are in deep waters. So this particular, but majority of the corals, need sunlight to grow. So essentially they are found in shallow waters, usually less than 50 meters of depth. Salinity, stable and saline marine water is essential, very, very vital. Water clarity, clear water enables sunlight penetration for algal photosynthesis. Substrate, hard surfaces like rocks or volcanic bases for coral larvae to anchor are needed as well. So these are some of the conditions, good conditions for the growth of corals. By the way, what are the types of corals now? Based on the shape and proximity of land, there are fringing reefs found along the coastline. Your Gulf of Mannar, for example, has fringing reefs. You can see the image here. Then there are barrier reefs. So the most famous example of barrier reef is a Great Barrier Reef in Australia, found further offshore, separated by deep lagoon. So if there is a deep lagoon in between, that is sort of a barrier reef. You can see the image effectively here. Atoll. So the current example of Lakshadweep is an atoll. Ring-shaped reefs that surround a lagoon, often over submerged volcanic islands. So Lakshadweep is the good example. Patch reefs, isolated reefs found between fringing and barrier reefs. For example, Florida Keys is good example of patch reefs. So these are some of the types of reefs. What about the global distribution of coral reefs, by the way? Found mostly in tropical and subtropical oceans between Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. By the way, remember these particular facts here. Majority of coral are found in tropical and subtropical oceans, but as I earlier said, some of the coral species are also found in deep ocean waters as well. So major coral reef regions include Coral Triangle. Coral Triangle, particularly Southeast Asia, world's most biodiversity reef zone. Great Barrier Reef, Australia, largest reef system globally. Indian Ocean, Maldives, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, etc. Pacific Ocean, Fiji, Marshall Islands, French Polynesia. Caribbean Sea, Bahamas, Belize, Florida Keys. Red Sea, high salinity reefs along Egypt and Saudi Arabian coast. Atlantic Ocean, reefs in Brazil, Gulf of Mexico and Bermuda. You can see the majority of the reefs concentrated, say, in the Southeast Asian triangle. So what about the coral reefs in India? Gulf of Kutch, Gulf of Mannar, Palk Bay, Andaman and Nicobar Island and Lakshadweep are major zones of corals in India. You can effectively look at the map here. So what are the threats to coral reefs, by the way? Climate change is a major threat. Ocean acidification is another. Pollution, overfishing and destructive fishing are another important threats to coral reefs. Let's see the location of Lakshadweep now. You can see the Lakshadweep location here. So essentially, Lakshadweep is India's smallest union territory. It is a union territory, we all know it, consisting of an archipelago of 36 islands with 10 inhabited islands. The islands are grouped into three major clusters: Amindivi, Lakshadweep and Minicoy Islands. All islands are of coral origins or atolls that are fringed by coral reefs, making the region ecologically unique. The total land area is just 32 square kilometers. So it is just a 32 square kilometer land area, majorly formed by atolls. It is uni-district UT, administered directly by central government through an administrator. Located in Arabian Sea off the coast of Kochi, Kavratti is the capital and main administrative hub of Lakshadweep. Agatti Island has an airport with regular flights from Kochi. So Agatti Island has an airport, while Kavratti acts as the capital of Lakshadweep. So these are some of the important facts. You may not be knowing these facts. What about the climate and weather of Lakshadweep, by the way? The islands experience a tropical climate, obviously, with an average temperature ranging between 27 to 32 degrees Celsius. April and May are the hottest months, with reaching up to 32 degrees Celsius. The region is typically humid, warm and pleasant, with 70 to 75% relative humidity. Southeast monsoon dominates from June to October, bringing 10 to 40 millimeter of average rainfall as well. So this is the practice question for you. Important article from the perspective of GS3 environment as well as prelims. Another important article that we are going to discuss is about wetland conservation. So what has happened now, the Union Minister Bhupendra Yadav highlighted India's global leadership in wetland conservation at COP15 of the Ramsar Convention in Zimbabwe. So he is visiting Zimbabwe for this particular COP summit, and he said that in wetland conservation, India is a global leader. India's leadership and achievements in wetland conservation is also important to know, and he highlighted it by the way. India now has 91 Ramsar sites, remember these facts, covering 1.36 million hectares, making it the largest network in Asia and third largest globally. So India has more than 90 Ramsar sites, specifically 91 Ramsar sites currently. The network of wetland has grown by 250% in the past decade. Udaipur and Indore have become the first Indian cities to receive wetland city accreditation, reflecting India's commitment to preserve urban wetlands as well. So Udaipur and Indore has achieved this particular accreditation in recent times. Community participation and public engagement has been promoted. Initiatives like Mission Sangha Sambhagita and the Save Wetlands campaign have mobilized over 2 million citizens. Essentially, integration with national vision and legal framework is also important to know. India's approach is rooted in the constitution, which obliges the state and citizens to protect the environment and wildlife. Wetland conservation is integrated into major national policies such as National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, National Wildlife Action Plan as well. And you know, with the philosophy of oneness with nature and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it reinforces India's cultural and environmental ethos at the same time. Mission Life and Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam promote environment friendly lifestyle as well. So these are some of the initiatives highlighted by the minister in that particular summit. He also highlighted some global engagements and international environmental leadership points as well. Particularly, India promoted an idea of mainstreaming sustainable lifestyle, referencing to UNEA Resolution 6.8 into wetland and biodiversity conservation efforts. He also held bilateral meetings with the heads of sites, Ramsar Convention and CMS. Zimbabwe's environment minister also, he met with Zimbabwe's environment minister as well. So, you know, from the perspective of mapping, go through the neighboring countries of Zimbabwe as well. Important from the perspective of prelims. India encouraged global participation in key environmental initiatives like International Big Cat Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, International Solar Alliance and Mission Life. So, all these 4 missions are very, very vital. So, and they are sort of an architecture of environmental governance in India. Remember that. Significance of COP15 Ramsar Convention. COP15 is a platform of 172 contracting parties to international bodies, civil societies, etc. to the Ramsar Convention. So, essentially, India is actively taking part in this particular summit to showcase its strong commitment to wetland conservation, climate action and ecological sustainability. So, what exactly is this Ramsar Convention on wetlands, by the way? Some basics. The Ramsar Convention is a global treaty focused on the conservation and wise use of wetlands. It was signed on February 2, 1971 in the city of Ramsar, Iran. February 2 is now celebrated every year as World Wetland Day to raise awareness about the importance of wetlands. Remember these particular facts. February 2, World Wetland Day. India signed the Ramsar Convention on wetlands on 1 February 1982. So, the convention itself was signed in 1971, but India ratified or signed it in 1982. What exactly is the Montreux record, by the way? It is a register of wetlands that are already listed as Ramsar sites of the international importance. It identifies wetlands facing ecological degradation where changes have occurred or are occurring or are likely to occur. The causes of change include human interference like pollution, encroachment or natural factors. The record is maintained under the Ramsar Convention. It is used to prioritize conservation and restoration efforts for threatened wetlands. So, what are the 2 Indian sites on this particular record? There is a Kevladev Ghana National Park in Rajasthan and Loktak Lake in Manipur. Both of them are currently under the Montreux record. Remember these particular facts as well. So this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Important from the perspective of prelims particularly. So in the decoded section, we are going to take a look at India's cooperative vision and how the current new national cooperative policy is resetting this particular sector. So essentially, Union Home Minister unveiled a new national cooperative policy replacing the one in place for almost 23 years. This marks a significant milestone in expanding role of the cooperative ministry. The new policy aims to strengthen the cooperative sector and is envisioned to be a guiding framework for cooperative movement from 2025 to 2045. So the cooperative movement will become more strong with this particular new policy. So let's look at some of the basics of cooperative sector in India. International Cooperative Alliance defines a cooperative as an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. So remember this particular definition. You can use such definitions effectively in your answers. So it is a voluntary organization sort of. And what are the constitutional provisions in India in this regard? By the way, Part 9B is dedicated to cooperative societies. Article 19(1)(c) includes cooperatives, granting citizens the fundamental right to form cooperative societies. Article 43B of Directive Principle of State Policy directly directing the state to promote cooperative societies. So there are these provisions. So essentially, cooperatives, to form cooperatives is a constitutional right in India under Article 19(1)(c). Remember these facts. Evolution of the cooperative sector is also very, very vital. The cooperative movement in India began with the Cooperative Credit Societies Act in 1904. So essentially, it has very British origins. By 1911, there were 5,300 registered societies with over 3 lakh members. On December 14, 1946, Amul Kheda District Milk Union was registered, becoming a major success story. Post-independence, cooperatives featured prominently in 5-year plans. In 2002, the government amended the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act, released National Cooperative Policy, allowed direct funding of cooperatives. In 2011, 97th Constitutional Amendment granted constitutional status to cooperative societies. So these are some of the major developments, and in 2021, we have the Ministry of Cooperation as well. So what is the intention behind the formation of the Ministry of Cooperation? By the way, the Ministry of Cooperation, Sahkarita Mantralaya, was established as a separate ministry in 2021. Previously under Agricultural Ministry from 1979 to 2021, its vision is Sahkar se Samriddhi. Key roles, obviously, policy framing, cooperative movement strengthening, cooperative-based economic development model, and training of personnel of cooperative departments and institutions. These are some of the significant key roles and jurisdictions. Infrastructure and impact is also very, very vital. Shifted from Krishi Bhavan to Atal Akshay Urja Bhavan, additional office in World Trade Center, revitalized over 8.4 lakh cooperative societies, connecting around 31 crore people. So these are some of the achievements of the ministry post the formation of the ministry. Growth and initiatives in the last 4 years is also very important to know. The Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2023, this particular act at that point of time, is in news. So what are some of the particular specific provisions of this particular act? Establishment of 3 new cooperative bodies, including the National Cooperative Export Limited. NCEL has opened up export sector for cooperatives, and it has secured rupees 5,000 crore in rice and wheat export orders from several countries as well. Plans for the world's largest grain storage scheme. So this is also very, very vital, by the way. And the formation of 2 lakh new multi-purpose primary agricultural credit societies is also. So governance and policy reforms are also important under this particular act. Transparency in the system in the conduct of elections, increased accountability of elected members to reforms aligned by laws, societies with the act and rules. Capacity building, training and skill development in the sector increased manifold in the last 4 years. Educational initiatives like foundation stone laid for India's first national cooperative university. Geographic expansion, active focus on expanding cooperative networks in UP and Bihar as well. Significance of the cooperative sector in India. See, as I earlier said, just note down some of the important facts. Economic contribution. When it comes to economic contribution of cooperative sector in India, 20% of India's agricultural credit is dispersed through cooperatives. Remember that. 35% of fertilizer distribution and 25% of production itself is done by cooperatives. 31% of sugar production is also done by cooperatives. Over 10% of milk production, 13% of wheat procurement, and more than 20% of paddy procurement is also done through particularly credit societies, essentially cooperatives. Over 21% of the fisheries business is handled by cooperatives as well, a major source of employment for millions of people and plays a critical role in supporting rural economy. These are very vital economic contributions of the cooperatives. As I earlier said, just note down some of the data points important from the perspective of mains. What is the political significance? Cooperatives have historically influenced regional politics. That is particularly true, say in the states like Gujarat as well as Maharashtra. Political parties that control the cooperatives networks often wield strong electoral influence in rural areas, especially in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka to a certain extent as well. But despite these achievements, what are the challenges facing the cooperative sector in India? Regional imbalance. Of the 8.4 lakh registered cooperatives, Maharashtra with almost 2.25 lakh and Gujarat with more than 85,000 dominates. So Maharashtra has the cooperative sector culture itself. So there is this regional imbalance, and that's why the ministry is promoting, the expansion of cooperatives, the spread of cooperatives in states like UP, Bihar. Political interference. Cooperatives are often controlled by political parties, leaders, leading to nepotism and misuse of funds. At the same time, we have seen that in particular Maharashtra, there are, sugar cooperative frauds and corruption in that regard is very vital. Poor governance and transparency, irregular elections, weak audits, limited member participation. Sarkarita scam in some credit societies in Bihar and UP involved embezzlement of public funds due to weak oversight. So the way oversight is always weak. Essentially, financial mismanagement, high NPAs, fraud and lack of risk control. PMC bank crisis, Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank fraud of 2019 is an example of it. Lack of digitization, weak professional management and limited capital access. Smaller cooperatives struggle to secure finances due to poor documentation and planning. So these are some of the problems of the cooperative sectors particularly, but we are trying to overcome these hurdles essentially. So in conclusion, we can say to fully realize the vision of Sahkar se Samruddhi, there is a pressing need of reforms focused on transparency, decentralization, digitization and capacity building. Strengthening cooperatives across all states free from political influence and equipped with modern tools will be crucial for making them engines of equitable and sustainable development going forward. So that is the vision for the cooperative sector in India particularly. This is the practice question for you, important from the perspective of GS2, GS3 as well. And that's it from my side, and stay tuned for another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.